A wage garnishment order landed on my desk this morning. Court-ordered, legally binding, nothing unusual. I process 2 or 3 a year. Except this one had the CFO's name on it, the guy who signs off on $400 million a year. That's not even the part that kept me up last night. 3 things by the end of this video. 1. What I found buried in his file that had nothing to do with the garnishment at all. 2. The question I had to ask myself about my own job before I said a word to anyone else. 3. What he actually told me when I finally asked him about it directly, and why I was completely wrong about what I expected to hear. I sat on this for most of the day before I did anything with it, not because I didn't know the process, because of what I found when I pulled his full file to process it. Let's go. Federal law caps how much of his paycheck can legally be garnished. I run it anyway, out of habit. After the garnishment, taxes, his 401k match, his health premiums, Gerald Ashford, Chief Financial Officer, nets less this month than our warehouse floor supervisor. I checked the math twice, it's right. But that's not what stops me. Scrolling further down his file, I find 14 reimbursements over 14 months. Same vague category every time. No receipts attached to half of them. Nothing that matches anything he's actually responsible for buying. I don't know what these are yet, but whatever's going on with this man, the garnishment might not be the real story. My name is John. This channel is where I document my own financial journey, start to finish. No finance background, no help from anyone, just real facts and real decisions. If that sounds like your story too, subscribe. New video in 2 days, 100% value, no filler. Now, I still had to make that call, both parts of it. I knock. He knows why, before I say a word. I can see it land on his face in real time. He shuts the door behind me before I even sit down. He asks me how many people process this before it reaches him. Just me, I tell him. It has to stay confidential. Then I bring up the other thing, 14 reimbursements, same vague category every time. I tell him I need to understand what they are before I file anything. He doesn't answer, not yet. 5 years ago, a college friend asked him to co-invest in a restaurant. He put in $150,000, a loan against his portfolio, not cash. He tells me he called it diversification at the time. He calls it ego now. 18 months later, the restaurant closed. He was still personally on the hook for the loan. To cover it without anyone noticing, he opened a home equity line of credit on the house, $180,000. When that ran out 2 years later, he took a margin loan against his own stock compensation, the same instrument he tells the board to avoid using personally, $95,000. Then, 8 months ago, his younger brother's business needed a guarantor after their father's medical bills drained the family savings. Gerald co-signed $130,000. The brother's business failed too. He still hasn't said a word about the reimbursements. Then I ask him directly, what are the reimbursements? And this is the part I got completely wrong. He finally tells me, 3 times a year, when a department's budget runs dry before quarter end, he's been covering small gaps out of his own pocket. A vendor shortfall, a client dinner nobody budgeted for. Then he quietly files himself back under a category vague enough that nobody would ask the questions he didn't want to answer. He was drowning, he tells me, and he was still floating this company's small cracks out of his own account. He says he doesn't fully understand why either. Then he tells me something that stops me. 6 months ago, he almost came to my office to ask about a payroll advance. I process payroll advances constantly. Hourly employees mostly, covering a car repair or a security deposit. I have never once had a C-suite executive ask. He tells me he builds financial models that catch a rounding error in a 9-figure forecast, but he couldn't make himself do the math on his own life. It felt, he says, like admitting the thing he's paid to prevent. I've processed a lot of confidential paperwork in this job. I've never had someone hand me their whole reputation and their own quiet decency in the same conversation. By the time he's done, I add it all up in my head, then check it on paper after he leaves. $46,000 on the garnishment, $180,000 on the home equity line, $95,000 on the margin loan, $130,000 co-signed, $85,000 across 4 credit cards he never mentioned until I asked directly. $536,000 on a $340,000 salary. And roughly $9,000 of that same stretched-thin life went to quietly covering costs that weren't even his to cover. I spent half that day assuming the worst version of this story. I was wrong. The version I got instead was harder to sit with. A man $536,000 underwater who still couldn't stop quietly propping up a company that had no idea he needed propping up himself. A title doesn't cancel a debt. It doesn't cancel decency either. Be honest with yourself. If you're still listening to me, it means this topic interests you. So, subscribe. It's just a quick click that takes a microsecond for you and adds a line to your profile. But for me, it will make a huge difference. Next video, the 30 seconds that actually decide whether someone ever gets wealthy. Not intelligence, not luck. One decision made long before everything falls apart. The exact kind Gerald never got to make in time, dropping in 48 hours. See you there.